Anyway, I have my notes up. We want to move on?
Yeah, we need to, because right now, if I blink or close my eyes, I'm picturing Bert and Ernie like dying in a ball of fluff. So
yeah, Bert and Ernie sitting on barbers' chairs, getting beheaded by whatever A or B list actors available to play Sweeney. Let's say Rami Malek.
Okay, we can go with that.
hello and welcome to episode 73 of Rhythm Encounter, the RPG fan music podcast. So I'm your host, Mike Salbato, and today we're going to be talking about NES music, which I think is something everyone here today is really excited about.
Oh, yeah.
So joining me today, I have the other two hosts of our other podcast at RPG Fan. So we have Jono Logan.
Hello there.
And Mike Sollosi.
I'm the lepidus of this triumvirate, unfortunately.
I was going to go with Avengers Endgame, but okay.
That means I'm the Michelle of this Destiny's Child, I guess, also. If that analogy is more helpful.
I mean, is that good? Is that who you want to be?
No one wants to be Lepidus or Michelle.
Oh, well, pick someone that you like.
So that would make you the Hawkeye?
Oh, dear.
Oh, I feel sorry for Clint now.
Sure, I'm the Hawkeye, or the Aquaman, as it were.
Aquaman's awesome.
Well, yeah. Are we talking like, Super Friends Orange Aquaman or Jason Momoa Aquaman?
I'm talking Batman Brave and the Bold Aquaman.
Okay, that Aquaman is maybe the best Aquaman. Excelsior.
He's amazing. He's the best part of that show.
Well, there you go. All right, we found you something positive. All right. Well, anyway, yeah, so again, we're talking about NES music today. We've been talking about doing some console-specific ones for years now, and it was always a question of where do we start? And while the NES is not the very first, console or platform for video games, it was the first one for a lot of us playing, and there's obviously a lot of material there for us, so that seemed like a good starting point.
Somehow I don't think you would have gotten a panel quite as easily for a Magnavox Odyssey episode of Rhythm Encounter.
Probably not.
Not a ton of RPGs on the Atari 2600.
No. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess there's a case to be made for the MSX, but
that's true.
Doesn't help a lot of English-speaking players.
We at least decided to start with the decade in which most of us were born.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's a console that most of us have a tremendous amount of nostalgia for. And the second we ever hear the boops and the beeps, we recognize it. We're like, oh yeah, that's an NES. Even if it's could be like a Master System or something like that, we still recognize it as like the 8-bit system.
Exactly. So yeah, so we have 6 songs today, or 7 when you count the quote unquote secret bonus track at the end. Before we get to that, Jono, you wanted to say a little something today, right?
Yeah, I did. I figured that I know this is an RPG music podcast. I would have said something on Random Encounter, but again, music podcast. A few days ago, Stephen Sondheim died, and for those who know Stephen Sondheim, he is considered to be the greatest composer of music theater in the 20th century. And I would be in full agreement with that. I went to, I was always in theater. I did theater when I was a kid. I went to theater school in my teenage years. I eventually went to college for music theater and got my master's in music theater. And I worked in the performing arts industry for years. And Sondheim, to everyone in that industry, meant something. It was very, very important to them. And when I heard he died, there were just countless tributes on Facebook from many of my friends. And I just felt very stunned by it. I wasn't expecting how hard it would hit me. And then it really started to hit me. And then I wasn't even listening to the songs, but there were so many of his songs are just in me that I don't even need to think about them. And I can remember every note, every word. The songs that I auditioned with for years, Giants in the Sky from Into the Woods, Joanna from Sweeney Todd, or No One's Gonna Harm You from Sweeney Todd, songs like that. If anyone listening to this is not a fan of music theater, I still highly recommend that you go on YouTube and just type in Stephen Sondheim best songs or most interesting songs, and just give a listen to what he did, because it's not just the music, it's not just the words. Both are brilliant, but when they're combined, it's a sublime mix of artistic form. And take a look at some of the shows that he has written, and not the big ones, not like just Sweeney Todd or Into the Woods, the ones that are known. Take a look at Assassins, which is about every person who's ever killed or tried to kill a president of the United States, and it's their story. Take a look at Merrily We Roll Along, which is the story of a very passionate, bright young man's road to compromise told in reverse. So it begins when he is already an old man and corrupt, and then it goes back to his hopeful beginnings. Go see Sunday, or listen to the soundtrack of Sunday in the Park with George, which is probably the greatest thing I've ever heard about art, and the finale of which is one of the only things that's ever made me cry in the theater watching. The end of it, Sunday, I was bawling my eyes out by the end of it. I saw the 2008 production on Broadway. Anyway, I'm not going to take up much more time here, but Stephen Sondheim meant so much to me, and so much to the person I became, my artistic taste, my taste in music, and much of my music literacy came about from trying to learn his songs. And not just learn, but also do justice, interpret those songs. So, whenever I'm on Rhythm Encounter and I'm talking about music, my understanding about, like whenever I talk about character or things like that, or how songs impact a story's plot, like any insight I have into that, if I have any, is partially due to the influence of Stephen Sondheim. So he died a few days ago, and it is extraordinarily sad. Now, he died at 91. It's not like he died a young man, but he was working on a show before he passed on, a brand new one, first since I think his last show was Road Show in 2008. So it would be lovely if we got a look at that. And I don't know if it will be good or not, but it will give us an insight into who that man was late in his life, and it might be a last gift. Anyway, thank you, Mike, for letting me say something. And if anyone listening is even remotely curious about who Stephen Sondheim was, please give his music a listen, because I think you're going to find something quite remarkable. I don't think there's been anyone like him in music theater in the entire history of music theater. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Like you said, like I know we're an RPG music podcast, but he was such a big name just in the music world, period. So, and obviously important to you. So I thought it was a good time to, we'll bend the rules a little bit for that.
Thank you.
I'll be bending the rules somewhat over the course of this podcast with some of the choices I made. You'll see what I mean later. But Sondheim was so influential, and his catalog was so wide. I don't think Jono even mentioned West Side Story, which is insane too. That Sondheim had a career spanning more than 50 years and was active until the last few weeks before his passing. So it's an incredible loss, and he's being celebrated and mourned very justifiably over the past several days. Yeah.
And West Side Story, the new movie version, being directed by Spielberg, is coming out in a few months.
Right. I'm still used to the to the George Chakiris version from the 60s or early 70s, but it was one of the first movie musicals I ever saw, like that, and I don't know, your Wizard of Oz's and Singings in the Rain.
It's a great film.
It's one of the best old school musicals.
I was in it in grade 12. I played Tony in grade 12. Stephen Sondheim's lyrics are so deep. West Side Story is just a brilliant show, and there's so many great bizarre versions of it. I think Cher has a one-woman show version of West Side Story, I believe, where she plays every part. There's an operatic version of West Side Story where everyone's just like an opera star, and they sing it like opera, and it sounds just so weird. It's going to be interesting to see the film.
I mean, I think the new one does have Rita Moreno coming back for it, but she's playing like the grandmother instead of Maria's best friend. So
yeah, she's probably not playing Anita, although that would have been amazing.
That would have been incredible if Rita Moreno, who's definitely 90 years old or something, was playing Anita again.
I bet she could still dance America, though. I wouldn't put it past her.
She was also like she was the special guest in like a top 5 episode of The Muppet Show. So yeah, my Rita Moreno love rolls deep, but so does my love for Stephen Sondheim. He will be missed.
He also loved video games. Apparently, he was apparently at one point he thought about making Into the Woods into an adventure game.
Really?
Yeah.
That probably could have worked.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that that is true because I really didn't know how to like segue into the music again. So that's actually really fascinating.
Yeah, adventure games, video games. Woo.
And we even have an adventure game later today,
And a video game with adventure in the title.
which actually is where we're starting. So if you're not tired of talking yet, Jono, you want to introduce your first track?
Yeah, sure. So like we were talking, we're going to do like all NES games today. So my first track is the Overworld theme from Zelda, but not the Zelda you might be expecting. So it's the Overworld theme from Zelda 2 Adventures of Link, composed by Akito Nakatsuka.
Yep. And I think it's Adventure of Link, not Adventures of Link.
Is it?
Okay.
Well, there's something I didn't know.
All right, let's just...
Good catch, Sollosi. Adventure of Link. Crepes. Okay.
The Adventure of Link. Yeah.
The Adventure of Link, right.
Yeah.
The Adventure of Link. Yes.
All right, there we go.
I when you said Adventures of Link, I'm like, wait a second. There's something in the back
There's only
of my
one
head
of them.
is saying this is off.
It's funny, Overworld, I assume that could really be the title. I think several of the songs today, because we don't have real album releases, we're just kind of guessing on the song titles, but what else are you going to do?
That's the Nintendo's entertainment system.
Exactly. And that's true of mine too. So I have at least what shows up on YouTube as Snowy Fields, because that's where it plays in the game. If the song has an actual name, I don't know. So we're going to call it Snowy Fields from The Guardian Legend, which is something I wasn't really thinking I would bring on today, but I did anyway. So let's go listen to Overworld from Zelda 2 and Snowy Fields from The Guardian Legend.
Okay, full disclosure, I do not love this song. Adventure of Link is not a game that I have a tremendous amount of nostalgia for. I did choose it because I feel like Zelda 2 doesn't get enough attention. Notice that I didn't say love there, I said attention. I think Zelda 2 is such a forgotten piece of Zelda history. Like, it's never referenced, it's never, like, no one talks about it. The side-scrolling RPG Zelda game, I feel, could make some kind of a resurgence in the near future. I've said this on other podcasts. I think that with Nintendo's care and everything, and like maybe even give it a little bit more of a Metroidvania flair, I think that an Adventure of Link game could be really, really interesting. But I'm here to talk about this song. And this song does quite a few interesting things in that it starts out with the traditional, the Zelda theme. Everyone recognizes it. And then it transitions into something that I feel is much more like a traditional RPG adventure sound, generic NES sound than the original game. Like, the original Zelda theme is iconic. Everyone can sing it off the top of their head. Whereas this one, I feel, just kind of gives you a generic sense of adventure. And Link is going on an adventure because it's an adventure of Link. And if it wasn't for the opening, I wouldn't have any idea that it's a Zelda track. I think there's a lot of reasons why this game is forgotten, and I think that the soundtrack might be one of them. There's some good stuff here, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing iconic. There's nothing that people really remember. I think that there is one thing that I do love about this track, and it's about 36 seconds into it, and I was listening to it, and I tried to figure it out, and I actually used my music theory for the first time in quite some time, and I think this is right. There are, at about 36 seconds, there are 4 sets of triplets. So they're triplets in the first one. And then underneath it, at one point, there are a set of 4 eighth notes playing underneath it, which aren't exactly at the same rhythm of the triplets. And it creates this chaos, this moment of utter musical chaos under it just before the loop resets itself. And I love it. It's such a cool moment where your ear is listening to it and your ear is just like, wait, what? Because it almost sounds in unison, but it's not. And it's really a cool moment. So yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff going on in this song. And I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in this game. But I also feel like it just didn't really live up to its potential. I would love to see a remake of this game from Nintendo and see where they took it. So yeah, that's what I think of this tune. What do either of you think?
Well, this song does surprise the listener, who is probably expecting the Zelda main theme, only to hear a variation on the Zelda main theme about 5 to 10 seconds in. But then, once it gets going, it's sort of very comfortable and becomes its own song. But I think it's deliberately trying to tell the listener or the player, this is Zelda, but it's not that Zelda. And I have my own frustrations about Zelda 2. I don't think I made it past the 3rd temple when I attempted to play it as a child more than 30 years ago. Or
it's freaking hard.
Yeah, maybe right at 30 years ago. And because it's quite difficult. And it reminds me a little bit of Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, because it's this non-linear 2D side scroller with RPG elements, but it doesn't really feel like an RPG of that era. But if it were to be remade, and I think this game is perfectly ripe for a remake, just as you suggested, Jono, it probably would have more Metroidvania elements and better sort of better breadcrumbs to where you're supposed to go, or where is the logical next place to go. But it's really hard, and that frustrated me a lot as a kid. And I think maybe the 2 big legacies from this game are Link's downstab in the Smash games, and all of the towns in this game naming several of the Sage characters in Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm. And the temple theme.
Yes, the temple theme is maybe probably the most iconic song from Zelda.
Yeah, you're right. I should have mentioned that in my little preamble there, but yeah, that is recognizable.
Yeah.
But the downstab, that downstab is crucial. You are not a Link player in 2021 without knowing when to downstab.
That's true. Yes. Let's see. What can I still talk about? I know every episode, at least one of us is always going to have to say, it's like, oh, well, those were all of my notes. But, they were. Like half my notes about that were that I think Zelda 2 is really interesting and weird. And I like it in its way, but it's also, it's just strange. I can never get over the fact that for some reason, playing when I was younger, I'm like, I know in the first game Link has a sword, and I couldn't figure out why in the second game he decided to trade it in for a dagger that was about 3 inches long. It just seems like a bad move. But yeah, I mean, like you guys both said, I think a remake would be really interesting. I think the concept could work. It just wasn't quite there. If you get, who are they that did the Metroid remakes? Mercury Steam, Mercury something. They remade Metroid 2 into something that's also playable, because I think it's very hard to go back and play the original Metroid 2 at this point. So I would be really interested in seeing what they could do with it, because they've never done 2D Zelda since then. And I mean, someone did, but we're not going to talk about those.
No, those are no one's going to remake those. And we're never doing a podcast on the music.
No. So yeah, I think that would be really interesting. Plus, I mean, I can only imagine what some of the music outside of the temple theme would sound like reorchestrated or rearranged, because at least we've heard the temple theme in Smash Brothers.
I think what you said is interesting is the term that most people use to describe the adventure of Link. And I think the reason why is, in retrospect, obviously it was an evolutionary dead end for the Zelda franchise, but at the time it was the only sequel to the game, and I applaud them for looking at the original game and being like, we want to try something a little bit different, put a new spin on it, maybe take it in a different direction. Because now the idea would be frankly insane, because the franchise is so established. But back then there was one title to go off and they wanted to do something else. So they pulled from, their side-scrolling background. They pulled from, obviously, Dragon Quest with the Overworld, and did something very interesting. And I don't feel like all the pieces came together properly. But I feel with a little bit of work and some features from today, and with our knowledge of today and genres of today, I think that they probably could create a mashup of an action RPG side-scroller that would work really, really well with the Zelda aesthetic and storyline. I
think so too. Yeah. So as for the actual song, I don't know. I kind of like the song. I
don't dislike it, but
it could be worse. I mean, I think it's good that it doesn't have too many moments of that musical chaos you mentioned, given that it's with you for the entire game on the Overworld.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It kind of has this marching ahead kind of vibe to it.
It's very square. Just dun, da, 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 it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. Now I can't hear it. When I was listening to it, taking my notes for this, I couldn't get more than 7 or 8 seconds in without in my head, I would just keep hearing the random battle sound start, that weird zoomy sound effect, which was always okay, I'm going to go fight these things, or, oh, I really do not want to be in this forest full of spiders hanging from trees, so I'm going to leave now. So it was a weird flashback for me, because that's what I kept thinking of.
Yeah, but you always want that feeling of forward momentum in an overworld theme, where where you feel like you're marching or running or adventuring, and I think that that the overworld in Zelda 2 does accomplish that. But I think they also accomplish that in your track from Guardian Legend, Mike.
Ooh, good segue. I actually had a really good segue that Jono also set me up for mixing genres, but then I really wanted to say what I wanted to say, so I ruined it. So thank you. So Guardian Legend, it's interesting. It's one of my favorite games on the NES, and for some reason, for the longest time, I did not really think of it as an action RPG. I was looking up some lists of people's favorite RPGs on the NES for this episode, because I had some things I wanted to bring, but I wanted to see if there was something I was not thinking of. And one person put this on there, and I thought, yeah, why not? It has moments of RPG, but it's interesting too. Until I was writing my notes for today's episode, I didn't realize that both games, or both songs that I picked today, were games developed by Japanese companies and then published in the US by Broderbund, who, if anyone had a computer or was growing up in like the 80s and 90s, for me, Broderbund was the company that made the print shop, like desktop publishing, and they just made like productivity software. And like it really got me thinking, like it's so weird and interesting that a company making stuff like that, like for computers and just like software, somehow somewhere over there took the chance, said, you know what, we should not only like get into like publishing video games for consoles, but we should actually pull these like weird like Japanese RPGs and other Japanese games that would probably never have released here otherwise. And it's really, I don't know, I just find that really fascinating, because what a I don't know, I just wouldn't think most companies would do that back in the 80s. Like it just seems like a real chance move, but I appreciate that.
I think I didn't know that. I think that's really cool. I wonder if it was just like the owner being like, I feel boring at work every day. I just make productivity software. I want to be known as the fun boss. I know. Somebody contact some people over in Japan. Let's release a game. That'll be awesome.
Right.
And they did.
I don't know offhand like what the first one was, but like this Guardian Legend was made by Irem and Compile, which turned into, I don't know if they're Compile Heart or Compile, I don't know. There was some weird history there. I think they spun off into this, but anyway, like Compile was a big developer back then. And anyway, so the game itself, since I think at least one of you guys mentioned you hadn't heard of it, and I don't know how many people really have heard of it, but it's all right. So it's kind of an action RPG in the sense that it has this kind of open world, overworld with a bit of a Metroidvania feel, because you can kind of go where you want, but you need access to certain keys and doors and certain weapons to get to certain places. So like think of it like an old school Zelda. You have your overhead map, except you have 8 directional movement and guns and lightsabers, and also your protagonist is like this like android girl who turns into a jet, and all the dungeon segments are like top-down vertical shooters. I mean, I don't know who came up with this weird combination, but I love it, and then your life and some other stuff can upgrade. All these different weapons, sub-weapons you pick up can upgrade, and they change forms as they upgrade. So I don't know. It seems RPG enough to me.
I think you're right. I mean, I've never really played the game, but I looked at some stuff online and watched some gameplay and a Let's Play, and I think it's a really cool idea to mix together like an action RPG with a fixed shooter like Galaga, which is, it's an intriguing idea.
It is. And then like your sub-weapons too carry through to that. So, if you really like your lightsaber weapon, like even in the shooter sections, you can just, use this lightsaber as a shooter, which is also not a thing you'd normally expect. But yeah, all that aside, I really like the music in this game. So it was a tricky choice as usual. Like I'm always torn between so many songs when I find a game I really want. So I chose this song, this Snowy Fields one, because I think it's really interesting getting a song like this that has like a real weight to it. Not necessarily bass, just it has this weight, kind of like this sort of, I don't know, for lack of a less dramatic term, like a grim determination to it. Because I think this is used pretty far into the game. Like I don't remember exactly when you get to each zone, but it feels like a maybe later game area. And I think it's an interesting one that it has this weight to it, but that has those weird, like high-pitched, like ping sounds, which I know we've talked about it on the show before. Like, it sounds like winter or it sounds like snow. And I don't know why. I don't know why we associate like high-pitched, like jingle bells or whatever with like snow and stuff like that. But like, it sort of works to me because of that, whatever that is that says, oh, that's kind of wintry or cold sounding.
Like, it's obviously because of Santa Claus, Mike. I mean, come on, don't want to get Santa upset with you.
No.
He's going to give you coal in your stocking.
Yeah, no. This is Guardian Legend. We're not talking about Secret of Mana.
Oh, yeah, and sure. I guess Saint Nick does allow himself to be represented in Japanese media occasionally, but I mean, come on, like, don't make the big man upset.
Okay, I'll try not to. Especially now, I actually want to get good stuff this year.
Right.
But yeah, so assuming I'm right about it being a later game area, I think that weightiness to it really works in its favor. But so that's me. What do you guys think?
I think that I think it actually would work as an earlier game stage. I agree with it, like the high pitched, like the tings and things like that at the beginning of the song are really interesting. But for me, the driving sound, the hero's theme, so to speak, in the quote unquote bridge, Dun 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 dun. It for me that's kind of like a hero theme, like determination kind of thing. So I think it would work as an earlier theme as well. The song is super short. Like it's by far the shortest. It's a 25-second loop, which makes it the shortest song that we have here. But it's weird because I don't find that it gets repetitive. I find that there's enough going on in that 25 seconds that it stays fresh, which is super important for an NES game because you're going to be listening to this nonstop. I think it's. I also think it's probably one of the most catchy tunes in today's group. This is the one that I just I can find myself humming it, that kind of thing. I really like this song. It's really cool. I have no idea how it's used in game, but it's a pretty cool little 25-second track that really works on a number of levels.
I felt like this song almost should have had lyrics. Like this feels almost like the way that the sort of melody is very persistent, but has the bass and those pings accompanying it. Like I thought this is almost like an 80s glam rock song that was just that it was just very brief and adapted to 8-bit to an 8-bit soundscape. It's very catchy. It feels like it's like it feels like marching or some kind of feeling of movement, which I also associated with your other track that you picked for this episode, Mike. But I don't know, for some reason I was imagining just like someone alone on stage, like singing this with, like Jono said, grim determination or just a sense of purpose.
All right. Well, I'm glad you guys both got that sense too then. So I was on the right track, I think.
Yeah, I think the key part about any NES song is the composers had a very limited amount of time and a limited amount of sound channels to be able to accomplish what they needed to. And I think that, again, having not played the game, but I imagine that this accomplished what it needed to very well. It drives it forward. It has some high-pitched dings, which seem to indicate, winter for me. I think it does what it's supposed to do, and I think it's a testament to the composer that they did.
I agree. So, yeah. I mean, the last thing I'll say is, like, if you can have a moment or get a chance to play the game, I think it's a really it's a really interesting mix of genres and gameplay types. So I think it holds up. I don't think it's just nostalgia. There are like multiple, fan sites that I was looking at a fan site earlier today, and they last updated and put some new fan art up 8 days ago. So
oh wow,
there's still people like talking about this game and celebrating it. So I think that's pretty cool.
That's the mark of a passionate fan base.
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of passionate fan bases, that didn't work.
No. The transitions you want for the next game to talk about are either talking about a game that does not have a passionate fan base or a game that actually has more than the usual number of channels of audio.
Yes. And what game would that be?
Right. My first track for this episode is Warriors of Sorrow, which is a boss fight track from Lagrange Point, one of a late stage 1991 NES game made by Konami.
Okay. And then Jono has a song after that.
Yeah. My song is... I'm not going for an RPG. I'm going for an adventure game, and it's going to be Dave's theme from the Nintendo Entertainment System version of Maniac Mansion.
This is such an interesting song. I can't wait to get to this part.
It's interesting, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's go listen to Warriors of Sorrow and The Boys Are Still Back.
So, Lagrange point. This is a really unusual game. I hadn't heard of it until it had a fan translation completed around 7 or 8 years ago, and after which point I did a little bit of research on it and was really impressed with the story of this game. Not story of the actual playing the game, it's just the story of what this game is, because Konami, made probably more than any other developer that worked on the NES and Famicom, really played around with sound chip technology. They introduced two kinds of chips called VRC6 and VRC7 that had 6 channels of audio instead of 4. And the VRC7 chip, which Lagrange Point, I think, was the only game that used, was able to do a certain way of modulating the audio that basically got tones out of that sound chip that don't sound like anything else on the NES. And they didn't use all 6 sound channels for every song. Like in a lot of games, or pretty much all NES games, whenever a character does a sound effect, like Mega Man shooting or Mario jumping, they have to briefly cut out the music from one channel, usually the bass or percussion, just to accommodate that sound. But with a 6-channel chip, like for Lagrange Point or the Japanese version of Castlevania 3, Konami was able to have a consistent soundtrack that wouldn't cut out during action noises. But Lagrange Point is an RPG set on a series of space stations, so it's a sci-fi RPG. I've tried to play it a couple times over the years, but it didn't really get that far because it's a very, very clunky RPG on the NES from 1991. But its music, with that unique VRC7 chip, is really unusual and interesting. It has modulated audio that allows it to climb tones up and down, and has bass that sounds like a Genesis soundtrack. And this song, Warriors of Sorrow, is really the I think the best encapsulation of, well, it's my favorite song on the soundtrack. It's just catchy and interesting, and it conveys an intense battle pretty well, and it shows off that weird late stage NES sound.
I didn't know that. Well, anything you said, but the sound chip thing, because when I was listening to that song, I picked up on what you said. I'm like, this does not sound like an NES game. Like, there are sounds here I've never heard in an NES game, and now I understand why. I thought at first it was just an arrangement or not actually from the game because of that.
No, it's the real deal. But I think Konami only had something like 4 games with late stage VRC 6s and 7s, and again, 2 of them are Lagrange Point and the Japanese only version of Castlevania 3. But it doesn't sound like an NES game, but this is one of the last NES games that Konami made.
Yeah, no, I like it. Even though spoilers for later, even though I'm the one that picked a Falcom song here, this one made me think of it gave me some Falcom vibes. I think just because it sort of has a rocky feel to it, and then the bass, the Genesis bass, like you mentioned, was also just a really standout thing. It really interesting. I gotta listen to the rest of the soundtrack now.
I knew about the Castlevania 3 chip because I've heard the comparisons between the NES versions and the Famicom versions, which is quite stark, actually. It's really cool if anyone ever checks that out on YouTube. I didn't know they used it in more games, though, so I think it's really cool that they put it in this RPG. That being said, I gotta be honest, this song puzzles the hell out of me, because it starts out and it sounds like it's building kind of this epic battle theme, and then it shifts over, and it almost sounds like some really catchy stage theme music from the game that came to my mind, which is appropriate because it's also Konami, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, for the entire middle section. And then it kind of shifts over again into much more traditional RPG combat music, like a boss theme, and it was working for me. And it just starts building and building. And then it goes into this bizarre little section at the end of the loop that works as a transition to restart, but it's completely different in sound and theme, and it almost sounds like a completely different little piece of music that was attached to the end of this track, and it just releases all of the tension, and then the tension starts building again from the beginning, which, having never played the game, I feel would create a very interesting feel in the battles. It's like 4 tracks of music that have been combined into a single track, and it's really, really cool. This is not I'm not saying I dislike it. It puzzles me.
Yeah, I remember thinking that The songs that this most reminded me of were the boss battle themes in Lufia 2, just because they're definitely rock influenced and rooted in that, but then they go places that almost seem like genre switches or song switches in the middle of the track. But really, the reason I brought this on from a pretty obscure game was because I just wanted to talk about NES sound chips technology for a little bit. It's I did some background Googling while Mike and Jono were talking. The only games that used those late stage Konami chips were Lagrange Point, Castlevania 3, Esper Dream 2, and Madara. So yeah, kudos to you, listener, if you already knew that ahead of me having to Google it.
You know, I love listening to music here and also just learning things from everyone. So I didn't know it, at least. So thank you for sharing.
I knew that about those Konami sound chips for several years, but I did not have every game that used them off the dome. But I mean, I'm a bit of a chiptune technology maniac. But Jono, let's talk about a different kind of maniac.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the people who were working on obviously these Konami games were, they were really into the technology and they really knew video game music. And the people who worked on the music from the NES version of Maniac Mansion apparently knew very little about it. So, the song is called "The Boys Are Still Back" by Fat Patty. And this is Dave's theme from the NES version of Maniac Mansion. And it is it's a flat out parody of "The Boys Are Back in Town" by Thin Lizzy, right down to Thin Lizzy, Fat Patty. I cannot believe that this is an NES game song. I can't believe that it's in an NES game. Because, yeah, it sounds a little bit crunchy because it's an NES sound card, but it doesn't sound like it was done on the NES sound card because it's incredibly complex for an NES song. It sounds like a rock song because it isn't a rock song. It's not a loop. It's not like a 30-second loop or anything like that. It's a full minute and 30 seconds that goes through 3 completely different sections that are a verse, a chorus, and a bridge that brings it back to the chorus again. And what really blows my mind about this song is that it's not the only song like this. Every single song in the NES version of Maniac Mansion is like this. It is they're like full-length minute 30 songs in a variety of different styles. So when I was a kid, Maniac Mansion for NES was my favorite adventure game. It was the only adventure game I ever played. It was not fun playing with NES controller and not using a mouse, but it was my favorite game. And over the years, I've learned a little bit about the creation of Maniac Mansion for NES and just the utterly insane story of this game even existing, but the hoops that they needed to jump through. So musically, maybe I'll talk about some of the other hoops in a second, but for music, apparently they did the game, they were creating the game and everything, and Nintendo said, wow, it's really quiet. Where's the soundtrack? Is it like, are you still working on it? And they were like, oh, no, we don't really want a soundtrack. It's kind of, the original game only had like a couple of songs. We're trying to create like an element of ambiance in the mansion and creepiness. And Nintendo was like, no, you need a full soundtrack. It's a Nintendo game. You need all the music. You need soundtrack. So the composer, a guy named George Sanger, had a band that was called Team Fat, which is probably where Fat Patty came from. So he went out and he talked to like a bunch of his like composer friends and like other like members of his band and things like that, and they just wrote music for the game. Like, these were not game composers; they were just rock musicians. So they wrote songs, and then they digitized the songs using the Nintendo sound chip, which is why it doesn't sound like anything else on the system, in my mind, anyway. And like, these songs are pretty iconic if you played the game because you listen to them all the time. Each kid has their own tape deck, and it's an item. It's in your inventory, and you can even like trade these tape decks between characters if you want to like trade music and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a parody of a very famous rock song that was written by rock musicians who had no interest or any idea about how to write video game music. And they did, and it created something super unique in my mind. And I think it's such a cool track.
Yeah, I mean, when you told me that story, I don't know, a few weeks ago at this point, like I couldn't get over it. Like there's a whole other story about that, like just of 1980s Nintendo, about like the requirements and the stuff you had to have to make a game. But
it's crazy.
I knew, we all knew some of it. We knew about how their thing with violence and some other stuff and swearing or religious symbols. But I had no idea until recently that they were that way about music. Like you can't have a game that doesn't have isn't just solid music. You can't have quiet moments. I never would have guessed that was a requirement.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, some of the story of Maniac Mansion, like there's an entire article. It's a very famous article. I think it was released in 1993, just about the guy whose job it was to like program the game and take stuff out that drove Nintendo crazy. Like some of the things, for example, with Nintendo, you could have no nudity or no sexual references, so they had to like remove art pieces that were in the mansion that were like classical art pieces. At one point, there was like a mummy pinup calendar. They needed to, of a pinup calendar, but it was a mummy. They had to remove that. They needed to change all of one of the characters' dialogue because the character was kind of like boy crazy and a lot of sexual innuendo, and they had to remove it all and make her motherly. They had to change the name of one of the video games in the arcade was called, wow, I think I might have to bleep this, was called Muff Diver, and they had to change it to Tuna Diver. I think and then there was the funniest one in my mind, which is in the closing credits, they had something that was like saying, brought to you by NES Scum, because Scum was the script creation utility for Maniac Mansion, which is what they built the game on. And Nintendo was like, what's NES Scum? And they're like, oh, Nintendo Entertainment System script creation utility for Maniac Mansion. And Nintendo's like, yeah, but it sounds like you're calling the NES Scum. We can't have that in this game. You need to remove that. And yet they completely missed or didn't care about the fact that you could microwave a hamster. So, Nintendo in the 80s, hey.
I mean, that's okay, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe it was the characters who did it were like the two punks. They were the two ones who are the only two who can actually microwave the hamster are the two rock musicians, Sid and Razor. Every other kid is like, you're sick. And those two are like, this is cool.
Also, I kind of think Tuna Diver, not really much safer. I'm amazed they actually got away with that even.
Yeah, I think that they just may have worn down the censors. And they were like, Tuna Diver, whatever, it's fine. I think we might need to leave Muff Diver in there. Otherwise, if I bleep it, it's going to sound like it's something way worse.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's fine.
Yeah, we're not Nintendo in the 1980s.
No.
Yeah, telling Dragon Quest to replace their crosses with tridents, because that makes sense.
No,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, churches weren't allowed to have crosses in the old Dragon Quest games.
Have either of you played Maniac Mansion? Like any of the versions?
I have not.
I also have not. I've only played later LucasArts games, but I was from the title of this song and from listening to it for a few seconds, I immediately realized that it was a semi-parody of The Boys Are Back in Town, but I was not aware of the Fat Patty Thin Lizzy wordplay there. That's pretty great. But they really did capture the feeling of a sort of like a retro influenced garage rock kind of song with this, and it's unmistakably NES and has a lot of personality to it. It was a very fun listen. Thank you, Jono.
Yeah, there's a band on. Hang on, there's a band on. It was. I wonder if I can find it. Dave's theme. Descendants of.
Descendants of Erdrick. Yeah, they do.
They're great.
Yeah, they're really good, and they're named after.
Of course they are.
Yeah, they're named after the characters from Dragon Quest II.
Yeah, they have a cover of Dave's theme on YouTube. I'll send it to you, Mike, so you can include it in the show notes. But it's awesome.
And I should mention, Erdrick is the hero from a prequel Dragon Quest game, and the main characters of Dragon Quest II are referred to as the Descendants of Erdrick because they are cousins who are descended from the original Erdrick. Sorry, clarify that.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate it. We can always depend on Sollosi to provide clarity for Dragon Quest games.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a couple series I can do that for, and Dragon Quest is certainly one of them.
Oh yeah. So all right, yeah, we'll put a link to that, and we'll make sure that we put a link to that article about Maniac Mansion too, because that was a really fascinating read. So
it's just crazy, and you can hear the guys. I don't know who wrote it, but like you can hear his tone, like even years later, he's just like Nintendo.
Yep.
He's just so done with Nintendo's censors.
Yeah.
It's not the best version of Maniac Mansion either. Like if you're looking for a version of Maniac Mansion to play, I would use it was a fan remake called Maniac Mansion Deluxe, which I would say is the best version of the game. But yeah, I mean, it was designed by Ron Gilbert and Gary Winnick, and if you're looking for a game that they designed much more recently, you can play Thimbleweed Park, which is also great.
Ooh, I keep hearing that, yeah. I'm guessing the remake of that one is a PC-based game. They remade the PC one, not the NES one.
Yeah, they remade the PC one. I think there are NES references in it, but yeah, they just a bunch of fans years and years ago remade it using Adventure Game Studio.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a great version. I think it's the best version of the game. Or if you actually want to play it and you already own the recent remaster of Day of the Tentacle, you can play Maniac Mansion on Weird Ed Edison's computer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a Easter egg in the original version of the game, and I'm pretty sure that you can do it in Maniac Mansion or in the remake as well.
I always think it's really cool when games have like full games hidden inside them.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's maybe another series that the two of you like a lot that does a lot of that.
No idea what you could be referring to.
I don't know.
Absolutely no idea what I've been referring. Yeah,
I think we're going to do an episode of Rhythm Encounter about whatever that series is one day, aren't we?
I wouldn't be opposed.
I didn't think so.
We've teased it. It'll come.
Yeah.
At some point.
I am looking forward to that. Maybe I'll have played one of the games by then.
Well, let's not go crazy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They're all on sale for like under $5 each right now during the fall sales on PlayStation and Steam. So you should have some in your library by now, Mike.
Under $5? Jeez.
I have a hard time imagining a better value for your money than spending $5 on a Yakuza game.
Yeah, that's nuts.
I think the collections are like 15 to 20, but you can get Yakuza 0 for $5. And if you haven't already done that, then I'm not sure we can be friends.
Okay. Well, when we're done here, I will go do that because that's too good to pass up.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Maniac Mansion is one of my, it's a classic adventure game, and the NES version holds a very special place in my heart. I would love if they would release a version of it with mouse support. That would make me happy. And I don't actually think I would want the uncensored version. I feel like a lot of the charm of the NES version that made it very unique was because of the insane censoring demands Nintendo put on them and the ways they got around it. For example, Tuna Diver.
If you're pushing for me to title this episode that, I'm not going to do it.
No, I think Nest Side Story is basically perfect.
Oh, you saw that? Okay. Yeah.
I did.
Okay.
I think so too. I don't think Tuna Diver is. Maybe I'll steal it for a random encounter episode at some point, just without any kind of context.
Oh dear.
It just makes me think of the of the Dio song Holy Diver.
It's depending on where you're coming from, I guess.
All right. So I guess it's about time to move on to our last block here. Which is my other Broderbund published game. Now, to me, as a kid, this game was Legacy of the Wizard, although it's actually Dragon's Lair 4 in Japan. How little I knew that I was playing a Falcom game as a kid. So my last pick today is the theme of Xemn, which is the dad in the family. And then after that, Sollosi has our second to last song in the episode.
Right, and maybe you've heard of the series before if you've played a Japanese RPG before. I picked a track from Final Fantasy III, Priestess Aria, which is the sort of shipwreck and overworld theme, but I am using the version from the recent Pixel remaster of Final Fantasy III.
Oof, so good.
Huh, I haven't... Final what? I have not heard of it, actually.
Final Fight. It's one of the first games that Yoko Shimomura worked on, actually.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right, so let's go listen to Theme of Xemn and Priestess Aria. All right, so Legacy of the Wizard. So I played this with my younger brother, like many, many years before we knew anything about Falcom. Right, to us, we're like, oh, it's another Broderbund game, because that was the name that was on the box.
The famous Broderbund game.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's those guys that made Print Shop.
And where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
There you go. So I won't claim to be any kind of an expert on Dragon Slayer before or after this game. So I'm not sure how much this deviates from the formula or if it was something new. But, I thought the game was really interesting. Like when we played it when I was younger, because you have this whole family. Like you start out in the house and you basically choose which family member you want to take into the dungeon. So you can choose them in any order, as I recall, and then each one plays a little differently. Like some of them jump higher or move faster, and then each one has a different play style in that they can use different items and reach different parts of the dungeon. So you eventually have to use all of them to get through the dungeon and get these items to, eventually slay the dragon. So I don't know, it was really interesting and really like nothing else we had played at the time. So it really stuck with me. And of course, so did the music. Every character has their own theme, and it's hard to go wrong with any of them, I think. But I settled on this one, which is Xemn's theme. Or if you want to go with the English version, Warrior. I don't really know why in the English one, Broderbund stripped all of the names out. I don't think the names appear in the game at all. It's just in the credits. So in the credits, they're just Warrior and Elf, or the pet's name, Monster. But they actually did have names, and they were meant to be a family. Luckily, the fact that they're all in a house, and you can see there's a dad and a mom and the kids, even if they didn't have the names and that was all taken away, it was still clear even then. It's oh, well, we're playing this family of people that are going into this dungeon and trying to help their son get this legendary sword or whatever. But yeah, so Xemn here, the dad, he's meant to be a woodcutter apparently. I'm not sure where that's explained. That's just what I read. So he's this burly guy, and he has the ability he gets these special gloves, and you can move certain blocks in the dungeon that no one else can use. So again, I kind of unintentionally picked two sort of weighty songs, but I thought this was a good example or a good case to use a weighty song for the guy that can move these big heavy blocks. So I think in music now it's not that difficult finding it really heavy or weighty. I know I'm saying weighty too much, but I'll look at a thesaurus later. Finding songs like that today is a little easier because there's more instrumentation. You can put whatever you want in games now. You're not limited by sound chips and stuff like that. So I think this one's really interesting that it has that feel. Even though this is a Falcom game, this was Yuzo Koshiro that did this, I think the whole soundtrack, as far as I know.
Yuzo Koshiro started out on the Falcom sound team, and I think he worked on the Legend of Heroes games when he was only 20 or 21, and then on East One when he was 22.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he was practically still a student when he composed this.
Got started early.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm impressed really that he was able to pull off that feel with the NES sound chip. That you still got this dramatic feel to it. And I'm going to link this in the show notes too, along with our regular track here. But the game was originally on the MSX, and the MXX version has more bass to it. It just obviously they had different sound capabilities, and I think it's good. I don't really know which one is better. They're just both really different sounds. But for me, I like the NES one. I like that it has this higher. It's kind of a little crunchier. I don't know. It has some variety to it that just I think is really good. And it has that underlying bass, and there's some notes that are kind of they're drawn out. So I think it adds to that kind of drama to the song. So I don't know. It's not like a lot of things I heard on the NES, so that's why I wanted to bring it on. And again, I don't know how well known the game even is nowadays, but it's an interesting experience.
I didn't know the game at all. I never heard of it before, which is a shame because it looks like a game that I probably would have really enjoyed if I had gotten a chance to play it as a kid. I like how it looks like kind of a unique mix of a RPG / kind of side-scrolling dungeon crawling kind of thing. It's a really, really interesting idea. I love the idea of playing as the family with the different abilities. That's a nice, very advanced idea for the NES. And I like this song, and I like some of the music from the game that I've heard. It's a 38-second loop, which is pretty standard for the time, but I think it's a tremendous, I would call it a great call to adventure style song. Like it really does have that adventure. I'm going to say Adventure Time, not the cartoon, but like it's Adventure Time kind of like feel to it. I think you're right. I think it's weighty is a decent word to put on it, because it does feel a little bit heavier, less, I guess, tinny than a lot of NES tunes. And maybe that's because it was released on another platform first, so that was the kind of, that it was composed with that platform in mind, and then they had to adapt it for the NES. Maybe that's the reason, I don't know.
Right, well, I think this is the first time I've heard a song from Dragon Slayer 4 before. And I haven't really played any of the old Dragon Slayer games, but I'm aware of their impact, because weirdly, like it for a while it was Falcom's signature series, but then Xanadu sprung out of Dragon Slayer 2, Xanadu, and Sorcerian sprung out of Dragon Slayer 5, and then Legend of Heroes, which we now sort of associate with the Trails series, started out as Dragon Slayer 6. Like 3 much longer lasting series sprung out of the old 1980s Dragon Slayer games that Falcom made. So like I sort of think of Dragon Slayer as this kind of grandpa series that whose legacy is very much felt, even though they aren't really around anymore. But the way that they incorporate RPG elements with puzzle solving elements and character switching makes it feel like, I don't know, like an RPG version of North American Mario 2, or maybe like the Trine games or something. But like just character switch, or the Lost Vikings maybe. But like character switching to solve puzzles is a pretty modern concept for a 1987 game, and that's that's exciting and interesting to me. But this song is it's what you've already said. Oh, I think I gotta fill out that spot on the bingo card. Someone says everyone's already said what's on my notes. But the like it has that forward momentum of a good Overworld song. It's weightier and thumpier than and doesn't use as much of the NES's higher registry, which I'm going to talk about in a minute for the song I picked. So that it's but the way it like is sort of bouncy makes it feel like makes it feel like a Mega Man track to me. Like this is energetic, and it's about adventure and going forward, and it's also catchy at a level that I would associate with Capcom's signature NES series.
Oh, I didn't think about that. I like that. Yeah, you're right.
This is Yuzo Koshiro writing a Mega Man track, is what it is, which is basically my dream.
I'd play it.
Right. Speaking of my dreams, I'm extremely hyped for all of these pixel remasters that Square Enix has done for the for PC. We've had the first 5 Final Fantasies get their PC pixel remaster versions in the past couple of months, and when they did the 3 pixel remasters for the NES games, it's a bigger jump going from NES audio to modern audio than it is from Super Nintendo audio to modern audio. I mean, obviously, just because of how many years are in between. But one thing about NES sound chips that I don't love is when they get very high, like in the upper registry, it sometimes there's a shrillness or a buzziness that is a little unpleasant. Like when NES songs get really high, it sometimes comes across as just the tone isn't as rich or as pleasant as when they stay in the lower or middle registries. So this song, Priestess Aria, is a sort of sorrowful theme which is supposed to clearly like either a soprano voice or a flute or piccolo or something is sort of the intended voice for it, but it comes across as like a little bit like, someone whistling a little too high, like the way that that very high registry notes can be unpleasant. So I don't love the NES version of this song, which I think is one of the prettiest songs in Final Fantasy III. But this pixel remaster version is so good, and it really captures the loneliness of this part of the game and the tragedy of the character of Aria. Avoiding some spoilers for a game that's 30 years old now.
Yes, but has recently gotten a remaster. So
that's true. Around the middle point of the game, the main characters find themselves shipwrecked in a giant ocean, and in order to again avoiding spoilers, in order to move on to the next part of the game, they have to collaborate with a woman named Aria, but Aria's circumstances are tragic, and this part of the game is a giant empty ocean that would require some spoiler explanation. So basically, this part of the game is a giant lonely ocean and a woman on a mission, and I think that this song captures both of these things with a really, really beautiful melody in flutes and chorus.
It's interesting because I agree with you 100% about the NES sound chip and how the upper register sounds a little bit shrill. But one thing I do like about the NES version of this song is that most NES songs are very much on the beat. It's like they're very square, for lack of a better word. In this version, the choice of instrumentation, which is a little too high, it gives it a much more dreamy quality, and I always like that. And then they really lean into that with the Pixel Remaster version, because you're right, they use it's a flute or woodwinds, and it's gorgeous. And what I really like about it is how they, in the original, it's a loop, it's a fairly short loop, but with the Pixel Remasters, they can continue the loop, but they can add extra instrumentation and dynamics to the second loop to give it a little bit more of a movement to it. And they really do that here because at about 1 minute and 30 seconds, things get way grander and bigger and more dramatic. And it's so cool. I think that's a really neat thing that they've done with these versions of the songs.
I can't figure out is that this is actually our first Final Fantasy III song on Rhythm Encounter, which kind of blows my mind.
Ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, I checked. They didn't even have that famous Theme of Wind Overworld piece on it.
Nope.
What's that song called? Oh, I'm drawing a blank.
I'm gonna do some catch up.
Is it the one that goes do 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 do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Eternal Wind?
Eternal Wind. That's it.
Yeah.
I knew wind was involved. I went with the water song instead of the wind song.
Yeah. I was very, very close to bringing the Shadowbringers version of Eternal Wind on the 14 episode, but went with something else instead. So that almost would have counted. I'm sure Eternal Wind will show up at some point because
probably in a few weeks.
Yeah,
and unusually there is a lot of Final Fantasy III in Realm Reborn in a certain part of the game.
Yes, that's true.
I'm most familiar with this track because of Final Fantasy Prey, the vocal album. There's a version of this song on it called "Once You Meet Her," and I always found the lyrics to be really, really pretty. It goes. And no one knows it where she comes from, where she's going, and once you meet her, you'll find that something inside is changing. And it's just a very pretty version of the song. And normally I don't love when lyrics are added to instrumentals, but in this particular case, it's nice.
That was a really, really good album, though. I like Prey a lot.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it in years, though. So, big surprise, I have not played Final Fantasy III. I bought it on the DS years ago, and I could not get into it. I did not play it much, and but the Pixel Remaster is when I'm finally going to rectify that. I think
the DS version is how I finally finished it for the first time. I emulated an NES translation of it. Oh, geez, probably 20 years ago, but did not get terribly far. And when that DS version came out, it was the perfect opportunity for me to cross it off the old list.
Oh, nice. So
yeah, I've only ever played the DS version as well, although I do own the Pixel Remaster, and that is next on my list of things to play after I finished Final Fantasy V a few days ago.
Oh.
Well, while I've listened to the soundtracks on YouTube many, many times, I have not bought any of the Pixel Remasters yet, holding on to faint hope that they'll eventually be on a console or handheld, not in the too distant future.
Oh, really? Any handheld console in particular, or something that would be a perfect fit for them?
You could say a specific handheld / console is where I'm hoping to eventually be able to get them. But I don't know. I want to play Final Fantasy games on console, especially since my PC is a is a jalopy that's hanging on to its last threads of life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I really hope that does.
To be fair, Final Fantasy II is also like that.
Yeah.
I really hope that does happen when 6 comes out. Me, like, I have a Mac, so I will reboot into Windows for one Final Fantasy game on a regular basis.
And that is Final Fantasy II.
That's the one.
Saga Zero.
So, like, I don't want to buy them on Steam because, like, it's just not something I'm going to shut down all of my stuff to reboot and play. So I bought the first Pixel Remaster on my phone, and it's not bad. It's definitely way more playable than the original Final Fantasy 1 on mobile because, yeah, it just is. So I think they did a really good job making them mobile friendly, but I'd still rather play it with a controller. So I'm also holding out for a Switch version of these games.
I think that's understandable.
Yeah.
And then plus I've played most of these games multiple times. Like I played so much of Final Fantasy, say 1 through 9 in through my teens and 20s that I don't know how much I need to replay them anymore.
Yeah,
but
fair.
But these on a Switch would get me to at least replay, probably 3, 5, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I was trying to focus on when I was figuring out who was going to review the Pixel remasters is I specifically went for people who have never played the games before. Because, I mean, we all have nostalgia about these games, and I didn't want that to impact the opinions. And it was very heartening to see how everyone's opinions about the Final Fantasy games for the NES and the Super Nintendo, they still hold up very, very well. Like, people love them, and who have never played them before.
It's helpful to know or acknowledge that these are games of a certain time, but with the right expectation, I think that they do hold up. And things like the story and the music and the job systems in 3 and 5 hold up unusually well.
Yeah, 5 is I had so much fun playing 5, and I'm not even talking about like looking at it through a retro lens. Like, it's genuinely like the most fun Final Fantasy SNES game. Not the best story, not the best characters, but in terms of mechanics, like, just a blast.
It's a great job system, and my multiple Bravely reviews on the site should probably indicate how much I love a good job system.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I think the thing I want as much as a Switch console release, I mean, it'd be nice to have them on all the consoles, but only one of the consoles is the one I'm going to, play while laying in bed. So that's why I want Switch. I would love a soundtrack release of all of these games because, you can listen to them on YouTube or in the game or the in-game music player, but there are no soundtracks yet, and they haven't announced soundtracks yet, and that's weird to me. I'm sure that it will happen. I don't know if they're going to sell them all in a bundle or what the deal is, but there is just so much good music in these 5 games so far that they really need to get those out there for people to buy.
In spite of having no evidence at all, I am very confident that these are making money for Square Enix. So I think that maybe they'll wait a year or something because of some Steam release deal, but there's going to be some kind of console release and some kind of soundtrack release. Maybe those two things will be connected. Maybe we can get it on vinyl. I think it's happening, but it's a matter of time, and I want it. Please let me give you my money, Square.
Exactly. Yeah. That's actually a good lead-in to our weird list of links in this episode. So I mentioned at the top of the episode that a lot of these games really didn't have albums, or even if there was an album, you definitely can't get it anymore. So, normally on Rhythm Encounter, we always have a link in our show notes to our post on RPG Fan, and we list, any link we can find for albums. So like where you can buy or where you can read a review. And we're going to be a little bit light on those links this time just for that reason. In this case, because there's not really a soundtrack for Final Fantasy III, I do want to quickly mention what I'm going to link instead is, was it earlier this year? They released a vinyl for Final Fantasy III called 4 Souls. And actually, I think it was last year. So this is a new thing they're doing. They did a vinyl for Final Fantasy III that had 4 songs on it, 4 original songs from 3, and then 4 brand new arrangements. And even though it's on vinyl, there's also a digital release. And they also released a song an album like this for 4 earlier this year. So that one I'm going to link. That one is available and accessible. And this particular song is one of the 4 they rearranged on that album. And it's also beautiful. I think it's kind of hard to mess up arrangements of this song. But that's why we're linking that one, because at least that is a version of this song, a recent release for Final Fantasy III that you can get. So I would encourage you to also check that one out while we wait for soundtracks for the remasters.
And we'll get them at some point.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, so that's what you can look forward to in our links there. But I think this was a good selection of music. So thank you, both of you, for being on here and sharing.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So got a lot of range in here, which, I think it was a good mix of songs because it shows off the range of, most people's favorite 8-bit system.
A lot of channels.
There is. Sometimes. More
At
so
least
in
4.
some cases.
Yes.
Yeah. So
if you're Konami, then you might have more than others, but
all right. So before we get to our final closing track, let's talk about what's coming next. So in a few weeks, right before Christmas, we'll have our 74th episode, which has been another long-standing topic, and I have no idea how this one's going to play out yet. It's going to be really interesting, though. So we're doing an elemental-themed episode. So we're going to have 4 panelists, and everyone is going to pick 1 or 2 elements and a song that represents them. I'm really curious how that's going to come out. It's a great concept. So that'll be interesting.
It's a shame we can't discuss Earth, Wind, and Fire in September, though.
Really?
Yeah, that's where I went.
I mean, do you want to push it back to next September?
Say, do you remember Dancing in September?
I do not. I'm pretty sure if you and I danced, I would remember.
Some far off E3.
Okay, so after the Elemental episode, we're doing a cocktail-themed episode. Also have no idea how that one's going to play out. It was another concept that... was that your actual concept, Sollosi?
Yeah, I think I wrote it in as a joke once because on a different podcast, Alana and I were discussing how Chrono Cross tastes like a margarita. So I like, almost as a joke, I wrote that episode idea in our shared document, and now it's actually happening.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see who else can come up with ideas besides that one.
Are you guys going to drink your cocktails as the episode goes on?
Oh, that would make for some very interesting podcasting. Maybe I will actually sing Bakamitai on the air, as you suggested in a recent episode of Rhythm Encounter, Jono.
I mean,
yes, I'm still hoping for that karaoke episode of Rhythm Encounter that's coming up at some point.
Maybe.
I will give you the most soulful rendition of the Lunar 1 boat song you have ever heard.
Oh my God. I want that so bad right now.
About 1 octave lower.
Yeah. If everyone wants to make a drink for their 2 song picks, that might be okay. But if the idea is to consume the drinks for all like 6 to 8 songs, I don't think I can encourage that. Like
just 8 cocktails by the end of it. It's the sloppiest episode ever.
That is a really bad idea. So I think we might just
that's how the entire audience will learn that we're all secretly low functioning alcoholics.
They must have an idea by now, right? So after that, the schedule is a little murky. We're really hoping after that we're going to do an episode on the Pixel remasters, but it really depends on when Final Fantasy VI comes out because we want to represent all 6 of them. So after our cocktail episode, we're either doing a Final Fantasy episode or somewhere around there we'll also be talking about our music of the year from this year. So somewhere in January, those will land. So look forward to that in whatever order they come in. If you want to, talk to us about the show, you can email the show at music@rpgfan.com. If you have thoughts about episodes, if you have ideas for upcoming topics, let us know. Let us know what you think, what you like. But don't let us know what you don't like. That's fine. Just tell us what you do like, because we like that feedback best. Again, the track list is on our post on rpgfan.com. If you want to reach me, you can email me at mike@rpgfan.com. And what are the best ways for people to get in touch with both of you? Jono?
Well, you can message me at jlogan@rpgfan.com. You can find me on Twitter at Jono_Logan. You can, if you have anything about the podcast, Random Encounter, you can email me at podcast@rpgfan.com.
And if you want to reach out to me, the best way to do so is probably Twitter. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times. I am Monsoon Mike on the RPG Fan Discord. And if you want to message me about the Retro Encounter podcast, you can email retro@rpgfan.com.
And this is normally when I would talk about the other podcasts, but since you're both here, I'm going to let you talk about your own shows. So, Jono, what's Random Encounter about?
Yes, Random Encounter is RPG Fans' random podcast. So alternating Mondays with a Rhythm Encounter, we talk about features that are up on the site. We talk about news. We talk about recent reviews. And yeah, it's a good time every couple of days. It's fun to talk to the people on staff and hear their thoughts about what's going on in the world of RPGs.
Yep. And then Retro Encounter.
Right. Retro Encounter is RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics. It posts usually every Thursday or sometimes Friday if I'm a little bit late. And every month we have a dedicated game that we discuss over 2 episodes. Last month it was East Origin, and later this month it's Final Fantasy V. And in between game journal episodes, we have topics ranging from just one-off specific game episodes like Imposter Factory this week, or topics like our 10 favorite PlayStation games, or I don't know, great RPG dogs and cats. It's every kind of topic imaginable. We have over 300 episodes in the backlog, so please check out Retro Encounter.
And then lastly, our other, at least the affiliate podcast, is Phoenix Edge, which they have not had an episode in the last few weeks. I'm hoping by the time this goes out, maybe they'll have another one. I know all the guys there are just really busy. But they are also worth checking out. They do their podcast on YouTube, and it's similar-ish to Random Encounter, where they cover general RPG, news and topics like that. So be sure to check them out as well. And beyond that, of course, RPG Fan itself, we have news and reviews that goes up all the time, and features. We have a Twitch channel, social media. We're on as many things as we can find ourselves on. And that's almost it. The last thing I will ask, because I ask every time, is if you have a moment to give us a review or follow us or subscribe to us on your podcast channels or apps, whatever it is, whatever you're using to listen to us, we appreciate that. So that helps us, just get out there a little bit more. So if you have a moment, give us a rating, give us a follow, and we would appreciate it. So unless anyone has anything else, the last thing here is to have one of you introduce our final bonus track for the episode.
Sollosi, it's all you.
Oh, okay. All right. I was wondering if someone was going to raise an
preempt
objection.
You.
Yeah, if anyone objects to this holy matrimony. But speaking of holy matrimony, I'm gonna unite 2 concepts that we introduced in the last block. Songs that are featured on certain albums, and Yuzo Koshiro songs, because Mike, somehow completely independent of each other, the 2 mics submitted 2 Yuzo Koshiro songs for this episode. But I'm also going to sort of stretch the limit of what is technically an NES song for this final track. This song is from Ys 1, or Ancient Ys Vanished, if you want to, go into the taxonomy of it all. And Ys 1 did have an NES version, but this song was not in the original cut of Ys. It was removed from the final version of the game. But then subsequent remakes of Ys in the 90s and 2000s all included this song, and it quickly became a fan favorite. So the song is called Dreaming. Yuzo Koshiro wrote it when he was probably 21 or 22, which completely blows my mind. And my favorite Falcom song of all time is the Rhythm and Blues remake of Rhythm and Blues arrangement of Dreaming that was on the 25th anniversary Ys Silver album, which I know came with special editions of Ys Memories of Celceta around 8 or 9 years ago, and is available on iTunes and Spotify and other platforms, because Nihon Falcom is unusually good about putting their albums on digital platforms. So yeah, this is the 25th anniversary remix of Dreaming, which was an Ys 1 song cut from the NES version.
That is a deep cut, in fact. So I'm glad you brought that on here. It's a really good song.
And also, I just want more more electronica rhythm and blues remixes of songs. I mean, this song has a killer blues guitar solo right in the middle, and has a really beautiful syncopated piano, and just has it just has a vibe. It's not an intense rock arrangement or anything, but it is a qualified banger.
I love it. All right, let's go listen to that, and thank both of you for being here, and thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Compromise, I'm the 2011 New 52 Jeff Johns Aquaman.
Also, good thing, bad thing.
There's our blooper.
Yep.